All right, welcome everyone. This is Juan Soto. I am a Microsoft Access MVP and also the founder of AccessUserGroups.org with chapters on multiple continents. I'd like to welcome all of you. Today's topic is one that's near and dear to my heart, which is how to manage SQL Server projects, because that is what I do in day out at my firm. We have some of the one of the largest practices in Microsoft Access consultants in the world, and I'm really proud of that. And so I'm going to share my screen. I did create a PowerPoint here, so let me share my screen, and let me know if you see my screen.
I can see it.
Looks
All
good.
right, thank you. So, all right, so this topic is near and dear to my heart because the fact that this is what I do, right, day in and day out. But before we get started, here's some information on me. So if you have, you can reach me at my email or on my, now it's called X, so I still refer to it as Twitter. And I always make I always make the statement, I'm not an expert in SQL Server, so sometimes I'll get questions on SQL Server. I have no idea, and I always make sure people understand, look, I'm an expert, and the relationship between Access and SQL Server, right? How to optimize that. So I always want to make sure that people get that part. I have some news here, latest Access news. As you may or may not know, the Microsoft's MVP Summit was held here early March. And I was not able to participate. Usually I fly out there. In the old days, all you have to do is show up and they give you a free room and they dine you and wine you and free transportation. They cut all that out now. So they've made it virtual where you have to pay for your expenses to get there and pay for your hotel room. And, it's just really bad because, but I always go anyway because I always call it refreshing with the mothership. So I always go to recharge with the mothership once a year. That's the term I always use with my clients. This year, however, I was in Peru with Machu Picchu. And if you've never been to Peru, I honestly do recommend it. It was a great experience. The country is just beautiful. It reminded me much about Ireland. The green hills with the pacas grazing on the grass. It was just a wonderful experience. The food was amazing. Lima is very nice. Fun fact about Lima, it does not rain there. And so there is no sewage in Lima. There's no channel runoffs that you can see on the streets, right? They don't have a sewage system for water runoff. So when it does rain, pretty much wait until it evaporates and then they move on. And because that's the case, they have every night they have a large workforce that comes out and water the plants. And because you go everywhere, there's trees and there's lawns, public lawns and flowers. That's all gets watered, and they get a huge amount of water from the Andes Mountains. So, interesting fact about Lima: it does not rain. Anyway, during that time, at the Microsoft MVP Summit, the Access team has some things to say about Access, and they've rolled out 3 major features since October 23rd. They really focus on these monthly issues with bugs, large address aware, data voice export improvements, but these last 3 have not been rolled out yet. They're still working on them. Something that I borrowed this slide from Carl. If you haven't watched it, Carl has an Access News channel on YouTube. It's kind of tongue in cheek, right? Because he's got, I believe, a niece that helps him with it. But one of the slides he has is that you can now solve this large address aware issue. So if you upgrade to the latest version of Access, there is a switch that allows you to, even though it's a 32-bit version, you can still access up to 4 gigabytes. If you switch to Access 64-bit, and let me tell you, that's what I've been doing with my clients. I got fed up with people calling me as, oh, it's crashing, we're running out of memory, right? And I love programming multiple instantiations of forms, right? So if you have an order form or an invoice form, you can have multiple copies of that form in memory. So you still have one form in your database for invoices and another one for orders, but we can program it so that you can open multiple forms and or invoices for orders and invoices, right? Even though you have the one physical copy of the form in the database. And I've actually documented that online. So if you go search in our channel, AccessUserGroups.org, and by the way, if this is your first meeting of our chapter, welcome. Thank you very much for showing up. We have multiple meetings throughout the month, so you can see the complete schedule at AccessUserGroups.org. So thank you for showing up here. The other aspect here is now you can open queries directly into SQL View. I realize this is not earth-shattering new features, right? But we take what we can get, all right? I mean, I have some personal opinions about the Microsoft Access team and my amendment, which I will not share with you guys because I am under NDA. But the fact of the matter is, anything I can get out of those guys, I appreciate. I am particularly can't wait to see the Monaco editor in Access. Now, we demoed that in the MVP Summit, which is under NDA, and then they show it at Access Day from Armin Stein. And I'm not sure if Armin has a recording of that. If he does, I do recommend you see it because you can then see the new Monaco editor. So you can put just like you can in SQL Server, you can do a table name dot and the fields show up. That's going to be huge, right? In the old days, we had to drag the fields and the query by example grid. But when you were typing SQL, there was no, you had to do stuff from memory. And then once you ran the query, you realized the field names were wrong, edited them manually. So I'm really looking forward to that rolling out. So this is something I've talked in the past. I just want to make sure people are aware. The new Outlook is not COM aware. So if you have a Outlook integration features, and we do a lot of that here at IT Impact, it's going to stop working. So I've already alerted our clients not to upgrade to the new version of Outlook because that'll damage. It is a very simple thing to revert back, which is great. And the old Outlook program is still going to be supported until October of 2029. So we still got 5 more years of Outlook. But it's a real shame that it hasn't been a priority for the Outlook team to take that into account. We have a question here from David. Does this mean that VBA with references to the Outlook object won't work? That's exactly what it means, David. Thank you for bringing that up. So you won't be able to send emails or create appointments from Access or from any Office program, Word or Excel, right? So keep it up. Oh, I want to do a shout out to Rochelle. Rochelle, welcome to the meeting. She is a former Microsoft employee who recently went independent. So thank you so much for joining our meeting. Thank you, David, for that question. Yes, you bet. I'm excited to have you here, Rochelle.
Yeah.
So look, the fact of the matter is, when I get calls from potential clients, they call us up and they say, Juan, I'm not sure, I have this old Access database that's in 20, believe it or not, some people are 2002, right? I mean, God bless them, but it's just really old, right? And so it's been working fine until Windows 11 came out. Now they can't upgrade to Windows 11, or they're on 2016, right? And they call me up and they ask me for my opinion. Says, should we just go ahead and bite the bullet and create a web app, right? Let's just forget about Access and go straight to the web. And one of the reasons I give them, because I don't suffer from when everything, what I have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I tell people, look, yes, you should go to the web app. And it so happens a lot of my Access developers are web developers. So they can make that conversion for them. But I tell them, look, one of the advantages of having an Access application is the wonderful integration you have with Office, right? We can create Excel spreadsheet from Access. We can format the columns and headers. We can create emails. We can create appointments, right? And so it really is, and you can do the same thing on the web app. I'm not saying you can't, but it's not the same. It really isn't. You can create a spreadsheet from a web app using the database and SQL Server, but are you going to be able to modify the headers and the columns and everything else? No. And so we have a huge advantage over web apps, not to mention that it's half the cost. I've had cases where people call me up and they have a set budget. They just don't have the budget for a web app. And I always have this rule. I said, look, if you want web, you can do it web, but it's double the cost, right? So if it costs $20,000 in access, it's going to cost you $40,000 and to go to the web. If you're tempted to try the new Outlook, which I did, there's two ways you can do it. Number one, you can do it on the web, right? And there's no harm, no foul because it's not installed on your PC. So open a browser. And that's actually what they did, right? They took that beautiful, and they did a great job for Outlook for the web. I love using that, especially when I'm on a Mac and I can't install Outlook. So I just love using that web version. It's not quite the same as the full program, but it's still great. And they just made that the application for the desktop, right? So they're trying to whittle down all these clients that they have for Mac and for PC and for other platforms, and just have a single Outlook client. There's been a huge uproar, by the way, in the community regarding this, and so we're hoping that the Outlook team does see the light and not and come back right to the fold and say, okay, we need to continue supporting the old Outlook program. But we really do want to inform your clients, let them know not to switch to the new Outlook anytime soon, especially if you're planning to leverage these features and access. Hey, this is something I started doing. This is my first report as a president of the organization. We have multiple chapters, so I'm going to put that here, this link, when you get a chance. Take a look at it. You're going to find some very interesting things. When I would do this before in other years. Every year I would evaluate, and I would share these stats with the Microsoft organization because I have to earn my MVP-ness every year, right? And so what I would do is I said, look, we have this organization I founded. We financially supported. We buy Zoom licenses. We host a website for free, and we help chapters start up. And so I would do that privately, but now it's like, you know what? I think this is interesting information for the public at large, where they can go and see what was the top, in this case, top 9 videos. 2 of them were Spanish, by the way, and last 12 months. And how many hours? And I was shocked to see that 12,000 hours were consumed of all the videos from all the different chapters in the last 12 months. If I had not seen those stats from YouTube, I would have never believed it. But it's just amazing. And we do make money. We make like around $500 something a year. And it does help offset the cost with Zoom. Still doesn't cover all the cost here. The objective here is that we create this content for groups that normally would not get content, right? So we have 2 chapters, Spanish-speaking chapters, one in Spain and one in Latin America that's starting up again later this month. So April 25th, we have Latin America starting up again. We create this amazing content on YouTube, and people are searching for it, they're consuming it, they're using it, and that's the whole point of this. So I'm really glad to see that. All right. So our topic tonight is migrating to SQL Server project management. Now, as project manager at IT Impact, I'm more like a sales director these days, but I still have project management duties with some clients. We have 2 other project managers in the firm, and sometimes I need to get involved and work on it. But because I've done it so many years, right, I have some unique insights in how to do this. Now, I have some unique insights on how to sell it too. So I probably might do that next month. So if you're interested in increasing your practice revenue and how to find clients, and I know some people recently went independent who are listening here, that might be the chat for you next month as well. So I invite you guys to show up next month and the actual sales training that we'll do once a year. It's part of our cycle. We have this cycle where we start in September and we finished in May. We take the rest of the summer off. So June, July, and August. June, July, and August we're off, and we start up again in September. But when you sold it, now you're ready to do the project management. And one of the things that you need to keep in mind is every client is unique, and you probably know this already. everybody's situation. So I'm going to try and sprinkle this presentation with some tidbits on how to address many situations you might come across. One of them happened to me this week. I have a client that I set up, one of my first clients I did when I had hair on my head out in Denver, Colorado. And I set them up. And back then, internet, many years ago, many moons ago, internet wasn't as stable. I wasn't too familiar with SQL Server optimization. And so I set them up where every night they back up to the web. And so they have a local SQL Server with the local SQL Server database. And then they have a SQL Server in the cloud that's feeding their database. And they're okay with that. Well, they're okay with their consumers consuming that 24 hours late. But lately, as of lately, they've had problems with backup and restores, and it's just a mess. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be suggesting to them to migrate to SQL Server to the cloud. Now, when you migrate to SQL Server to the cloud, to convince people, there's the pros and cons, and I'll get into a lot more detail next month. But basically, there are some wonderful advantages to having SQL Server in the cloud. But this topic is SQL Server project management, right? So you already decided you're going to the cloud. You already decided you're going to go locally, right? You started with an Access backend. So we're going to talk about those situations you're going to come across when you go from a pure Access solution to an Access with SQL Server backend. And the biggest thing is you really need to fix any performance issues before you migrate. There's this huge misconception that I'll just migrate the data, right? The customer calls you up, says, Juan, performance is terrible, man. I've got 15 people using this database. When right there, there's issues, right? Because Access was never designed to handle that. I can get it to work with 24 people, right? I know all the trips and checks to do that, but beyond 24 people, you're just asking for trouble. But anyway, they call me up and say, hey, this thing is slow. I'm hiring more employees. I want to use their VPN. I can't do that. Can you migrate? And I sell them the prospect of migration. But once I sell them the project, and before I start working on migrating the system to SQL Server, I need to fix any inherent issues with the database. Tables without primary keys. I see that, believe it or not. Tables without secondary keys. Tables that have their primary key is ID, right? And God bless these people. They designed this database. They're not professional developers. They designed the database, and it's working and turned into a mission-critical application for their company. And all the tables have primary key ID. And I tell them, look, this is not an ideal situation. It makes it harder to do queries and troubleshoot and all that. So we really need to fix that. But one of the reasons you want to fix these performance issues is because they may get worse, right? So you sold this project to a customer, right? Hey, let's migrate to SQL Server. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. It's going to be faster, better, more reliable. And then you do the migration. It's actually slower. Still, better reliability, right? It's not going to crash like an Access backend will crash on you, but it's not as fast, right? And you have egg on your face. And so one of the reasons is because a bad table design got migrated into a SQL Server database. And so a good example of that is lack of primary keys, lack of their secondary keys. You want to address those issues before you start the migration, is my point. All right. Now, if you sold them on a project, right, to migrate to SQL, you probably have a project plan in your proposals. But we're going to talk about a project plan here that's going to guide not just your team, but the customer's team and the customer's expectations. You really need to make it clear to them they're going to be involved every step of the way. So so a project plan is critical, right? So that everybody's on the same page. Let me just move the monitor here. I have one of these tilt monitors. Everybody's on the same page as to what's going to be accomplished and when is it going to happen. You can refer to the project plan when Steve was doing, when people have questions about it. Now, we use Monday.com for project management. I love Monday.com. If I have a chance, I'll show you some Monday.com features that I love about it, but project plan is critical. Now, what should be in your project plan? Well, this is a template, right? I'm gonna give you a template that you can put in your project plan. The first thing I do, after I fix the performance issue, I'm ready to migrate to SQL Server, is use the SQL Server Migration Assistant for Access, SSMA, right? I missed the for Access there at the end of Assistant. It's a wonderful tool that's highly optimized that you can use either to upload to the Azure or to upload to a local SQL Server. And in many instances, it's the only tool that you have available to do the migration. You could do other methods or even use other tools available in the market. I always use SSMA. So one or two for tool. Now, I've done topics on the use of SSMA, but one of the reasons that I love the SSMA is because you can save the initial project. Because think about it, you're going to be using project, you're going to be migrating data throughout the project, right? We have a ice cream manufacturer in Michigan. They called us up last year. They said, Juan, we have this 24/7 operation. We have multiple chefs. They run the whole thing on Access with SQL Server. The whole operation. I'm talking about inventory of raw materials, order management, production scheduling, QC, warehousing, shipping. It brought a tear to my eye when I saw this setup, right? This is a manufacturer that designed these access databases in-house, right? They have a database access application for QC. They have another one for production scheduling. And we're using an SSMA to upgrade them to the latest version of SQL Server and getting them off because the original developer wasn't not trained on how to optimize access with SQL Server. So he wasn't leveraging the muscle of SQL Server. There were no views, there were no stored procedures, right? And so he had to do things with local temp tables that we had to rip all that out. And it's taking us a year. It's taking us a year. And as you can imagine, it was not cheap because we were doing this for a year and have 2 developers on that project. But once we complete it, now we're rolling it out during May, from May. I believe for Mother's Day weekend, we're rolling it out. We're going to have them updated to the latest version of Access Office and SQL Server. But with SSMA, you're going to upload the first time to create the database, SQL Server. And then you're going to create a beta version of the Access database, connect to SQL in the cloud. And you want to give that beta version to the client to testing. Well, the client wants to test with the latest data. How are they going to do that? SSMA, you upload the data again. And because you originally configured and saved the file, because SSMA is smart enough to know what issues are there and resolve them as you migrate, right? When he gives you that backend database again, 3 months after you start the project and you have a beta, right? So 3 months, 4 months later, you can use that same project to upload again. And then you may have multiple rounds of beta testing. And every time they want to see the latest data, because they want to check your work, right? They want to report on the beta file. And they want to compare it to the old Access database. Both reports make sure that both numbers are identical, right? And I encourage them to do that. And then finally, when you do roll out, you're going to use SMA. All right. So it's a great tool. It's going to allow you to have easily update the SQL Server data every time you need to. The second aspect of your project template is going to be to fine tune your SQL database. You want to be able to add secondary indexes. Because here's the thing, SQL Server does not do that for you. Microsoft Access, as you probably were aware, if you end the field with the letters ID, right? Like for example, sales ID or month ID or salesman ID, it automatically creates a secondary index for you, or sometimes called foreign keys. And you want to be able to, SQL Server does not do that for you, right? So you have to create those secondary indexes. So as part of the project, if you create new tables, by the way, I have a blog post on how to create tables for SQL Server for Access, right? And SQL Server, how to create tables in SQL Server for Access. You want to make sure you add those secondary indexes. So let's talk about fine tuning, because this is where the magic sauce happens, right? That's why we get hired, because we're known worldwide for experts in this area. And so what our developers are trained to do is they migrate the data and then they learn how to use the application. They link the tables back to SQL with Access, right, using the latest ODBC drivers. And then they run the program like a power user would, reports, forms, and you notice invariably they're going to find slowness. Now, we like to use when it's based on the cloud, because when it's local, it will mask performance issues, right? Because that's a local SQL Server database. So that's the ideal situation, right? Because if I'm on a local LAN, local area network, I'm probably going to whiz through the performance part of fine tuning and performance of the database because it's a local SQL Server and it's got much more forgiving for bad queries and so forth. But if it's in the cloud, we like to provide our clients with the 3-second rule, right? So 1001, 1002, 1003, the report comes up or the form comes up. To strive to that, we're going to add views, store procedures, and other techniques, CTEs, CLRs, whatever we need to, so that relationship between Access SQL Server, where the muscle of SQL Server is one being used for queries, right? The last thing you want is for Access to grab tables from the cloud and do queries. We always want that query processing in the cloud. And that's why we create views. One advantage of views is the project plan, the query plan gets saved with the view in SQL Server. When you have a view in SQL Server that's used a lot, what happens with that view? It gets loaded into memory and stays in memory. That's important because what you'll notice, and I've seen clients tell me this, says, Juan, for some reason, that form gets faster over time. Says, yeah, because you have 25 employees hitting the order form. And so using that same query view on the SQL Server, and SQL Server is going to see that and say, oh, they're using this view a lot. Let me keep it in memory. And so it keeps it in memory with an optimized query plan. And you'll actually see these performance boosts, right? As opposed to creating a pass-through query. What's the problem with the pass-through query? Now, I use them. I use pass-through. Nothing wrong with using pass-through queries, but if you base your forms on pass-through queries instead of views, those do not get optimized with a query plan. Save with the view. It doesn't get saved in memory SQL Server, right? So you want to be able to use views where needed in order to optimize it. Now, we don't convert every query to a view. I think that's just not necessary. But if you have a query that looks like a spaghetti that was thrown against a wall, but multiple tables and relationships, I can almost guarantee you want to create that into a view. Be able to do that. Keep in mind that views are not editable in Access unless you add what?
Primary key.
An index, right? So you want to add it.
As a primary.
Now you add the index in Access. You do not add the index in SQL Server. So when you link that view into Access, you want to use DDL commands in the query, and this is an advanced topic, to create that index in the Access database. So every time you then can edit the data on the view. And then you go ahead and you've done all that work, right? You optimize all that work. Now you're ready for your first beta. And this is where the rounds of optimization come into play. What does this mean? Speed is subjective, right? Have you heard this example from me? If you attended this before, I had a programmer came up to me and says, Juan, this report's taking 30 seconds, right? And he already spent a considerable time on it. He says, I could probably get down to 3 seconds, but I'm gonna need another couple hours. And so I said, you know what, let's just consult with the client. So we called the client and he's like, 30 seconds, that's great. It used to take at least 3 minutes in Access. Well, I said, well, I'm glad I'm glad it's working now for you, but do you needed that 3 seconds because we're gonna need a couple more hours? And he said, oh no. I run that report once every 3 months. I don't need it. I can wait 30 seconds. Don't worry about it. Let's work on some other stuff. So what I'm saying is speed is subjective, right? You don't want to consume your budget of hours on stuff only to realize it wasn't important to the client. So you have to, that's where that loop comes in. And you don't, obviously an order form is going to be important. You want to optimize that, right? An invoice form, an inventory transaction, move transaction, inventory, right? But searching for a client, searching for an order, you got somebody on the phone, you want to be able to quickly search an order or search for that client record. But some stuff can be subjective. So what we do is we give the data to the client knowing full well They're gonna get back to us and say, okay, well, this is slow, that's slow. We need you to optimize this, we have to optimize that, right? And we tell them, says, look, we didn't optimize everything because we don't want to blow the budget and stuff that wasn't necessary. Review it and then submit your bugs to Monday.com. Now, what we do is we create a special email address on Monday.com using our domain itimpact.com. So anytime they email, usually it's like, if, for example, the company's name Acme, we'll create an email called acme@itimpact.com. They can email bugs. That goes into Monday.com, and then it gives an alert on our Teams channel saying, hey, customer posted a bug. Our developers see the bug, they go to the Monday.com board, and they can reply with comments, ask for additional screenshots, and so forth. So we send that first round, but that's our first round optimization. And we go into these rounds of optimization. Now, you gotta be careful you don't fall into a trap here, because sometimes customers will ask you for more optimization, more optimization, more optimization. And I tell them, says, look, it's an elliptical curve. And that elliptical curve means that the more work I put in, more hours, I get less and less return on investment for time, right? So as I approach that 3-second time horizon, I can spend countless hours trying to fine tune to get that form to open in 2 seconds or within 1 second, but it's not going to help you in the long run for in terms of the budget of the project and overall, right? And so you want to temper expectations. And this is where, when you have a particular case, for example, I have a customer that I mentioned earlier in Denver, they have a local SQL Server, and we're going to have a meeting with them later this week. We want them to migrate to pure a solution on the web. And the first thing I'm going to tell them is it's not going to be as fast as a local SQL Server. So right off the bat, I know they're going to be upset. You're going to mean it's not going to be as fast? Well, because the local SQL Server is the fastest thing you can have, right? It's on the LAN. The LAN operates on 1,000 megabits per second. Not, we can have internet speeds of 1,000 gigabits now with fiber, but still you have all these other hops and to get to a data center and then come back. It's never going to be as fast as local network, right? And so when I migrate from a local SQL Server to the cloud, there's always a sense of disappointment. You can see their shoulders droop a little bit when I tell them, look, it's not going to be as fast. Some things are going to be as fast, but not overall. It's going to be as fast as your local SQL Server. And I actually had, of all the years I've been doing this, I've had one customer call me up and says, I'm going to pay you to take me back to a local SQL Server. They just couldn't handle the 3 seconds after waiting for things for 3 seconds. So overall, it's been great, right? People get it, they understand the advantage of SQL Server, but it really is not for everybody. We talked about this, not optimize too much of the app too soon, don't engage electrical curve. We also talked about migrating data, beta, alpha version, beta version, right? And then finally doing the final rollout. This is important, right? I always tell clients when I give them a beta, make sure you run the reports in beta and make sure you run some reports in the old pure access database and make sure they match. Sometimes they don't. Why don't they match? One of the biggest reasons it doesn't match, I learned this the hard way, is because of dates. All right, now think about this. You have a sales report that you want to run, right? You just finished the quarter of 2024, right? So I put in the day of January 1st to March 31st. I want to see the sales performance for the first quarter of the year. And so a lot of you might think, okay, I'll just use a between, right? So between January 1st, 2024 and March 31st, 2024, under the sales date, right? To see all the sales occurred in the first quarter of 2024. Great. Works in Access, will not work in SQL Server. Why is that? Anybody know why it won't work in SQL Server necessarily?
Because you got a time element on your dates.
You got the time element. And so what we learned the hard way is you have to do that between. You can still use that in SQL Server View and queries, but you have to put between January 1st, 2024, 00001, right? Midnight of January 1st, 2024. I highly doubt there's sales at that time, but maybe if you're Amazon, there is. So you start at midnight of January 1st and you end at 11:59:59 on March 31st. Right? So you have to use those end caps with the time there, because otherwise you're not going to get consistent results, right? So there's some gotchas involved that when you're a brand new developer, and I know some people on this call who I mentored on how to migrate projects to SQL Server, you have to, you learn this the hard way, or you learn it when we mentor you on a project of this size where you migrate to your first migration to SQL Server. So you want to check the records in the table, right? It's a very simple thing. I got 1 million records in Access. I should have 1 million records in the order details form, or the order details table in SQL Server, right? And SQL Server Migration Assistant actually gives you totals of records migrated. It's a report that shows up at the end of the migration process, which is a great. Allows to actually tell you the percent if any records were not migrated. One of the biggest issues is when you migrate data, you got to watch out for is the multi-value field type in Access is not supported in SQL Server. And the migration system will not migrate those tables over. And Mark Edwards was on this call. I actually had a client a couple years back that fixes radiators that was using that a lot. And we had to extract the data from that column into a separate table, create a one-to-many relationship, all before we even started with SQL Server migration. So you have these features that are created in Access, people sometimes use, sometimes they don't, that you have to watch out for. One of them is the multi-value data type. The other one is the attachment data type, right? Now, we can do tables in SQL Server where you upload files. And in fact, we use that technique to issue auto updates to our, so we have an auto code that will check for a new version of the system and download it, and actually downloads it from a table because we use that particular field type in SQL Server to store the new front end. But if you have an attachment field, that also will not work. You need to extract that data to a separate table, to a separate medium, such as the local area network. And then you have to work with the client. If they go all cloud, right? So think about this. You got a client who does not want to use our local area network anymore. Why? Because now they have a disconnected workforce. They're not necessarily going to see the local LAN folders. They might use VPN to connect, right? They might be salespeople that are associated with the company that have no access to the local network. So you want to be able to use attachments, these additional files like docs or Excel or PDFs. You have to figure out an alternative. What we've done in IT Impact is we use OneDrive, and we use OneDrive to store those files as opposed to SQL Server, because you could store files in SQL Server, and we've done that for our customers if there's a small amount of files, because otherwise it'll bloat your SQL Server database up too. If you got thousands of files, it'll just blow it up too much, right? We once had a customer that does video recording that they wanted to store in their database, and we told them flat out, says you can't store video recordings. You have to come up with another alternate means to store that in the cloud, right? So that could be cold storage in Azure or another storage medium. You have to create a storage account. I mean, that causes its own issues, right? Because now you have to create a storage account, or you can use OneDrive. OneDrive is fine. OneDrive is great for that kind of stuff. Don't put backends in OneDrive and expect it to work. That's a whole different topic of conversation. One of the issues you're going to come across is a lot of these systems are mission critical. Because business cannot operate without them, right? So they entrusted the crown jewels to you. Here you are, you sold them. You sold this project. You're really proud of yourself. You sold them this $25,000 migration project over to SQL Server. The last thing you want to do is impact the business so that they're losing money. You don't want to be in that situation. It's not fun. Or the operations are down because they're waiting on you to cut over, right? So cutting over, you have to put some thought on it. So I actually set up meetings with my clients, and we have plans that we put in place for cutting over, especially that ice cream manufacturers running 24/7. When are you going to cut over? When they're running 24/7, right? It's not easy. It's not hard. It's not. That's why they're doing it for Mother's Day, because everybody's going to be off for that Mother's Day, and there's a clean cut. There's nobody at the plant that we can say, okay, we can use this to cut over, migrate everything on Mother's Day, and then start up on Monday morning. You have to put thoughts into this, because a lot of these systems, there's a reason why they're paying you so much money to migrate, because they are mission critical applications, and they need your help and assistance to help them improve their operations, right? So talk with the client and see when it's, sometimes they'll let you have Friday afternoons. I mean, so I've had clients say, yeah, 2 o'clock after a Friday, we'll stop using the Access database, and then you have 2 to 5 to roll it out. And they don't work Saturday and Sunday, so if they need more time, you come in on Saturday, and if we keep working on it, and if Saturday still they're still having issues for whatever reason, you can work on it Sunday. But if you're still working on a migration Sunday, you probably need to not migrate Monday morning and rethink what's happening with your migration and cutover and why is it not working, right? But I like doing it Friday afternoon because that gives me the whole weekend in case there's issues I need to address or things that I didn't think about. And usually I get very upset if I have to work on the weekend. We're not used to working weekends around here. It's probably because either our own testing or the client's testing wasn't thorough enough, and we encounter issues once we cut over. Having said that, you have to have an emergency plan in place for Monday morning, right? So you cut over Friday, everything went hunky-dory, you check that the data moved over, the reports match. There's high-fiving going on. We take them to the bar, I pay the first round, and we're talking about, we're talking about how great we are. Coming Monday morning and it's a complete disaster. Why is that? Why do you think that happens sometimes? Well, because we didn't have a stress test on the SQL Server system, that new SQL Server database. Up until then, we only had a small amount of users, beta testing, and it's only been minimum interaction with it. And then come Monday morning, we put all these employees on the new database. It's like a shiny little toy, right? And it turns out that it gets hit much more. SQL Server database gets much more, and it's a slow crawl, right? And you're trying to figure out why is it slow. It's because we didn't do server load testing, and it's not easy to do. There are programs that you can buy to simulate loads on SQL Server. And honestly, I don't do it. I don't do SQL Server load testing at all. I've done this enough. Mark and I've done enough these migrations over to know if we have to do load testing. We do have a client. Mark and I work on this project together. They have close to 100 employees, and the client himself wanted to do load testing. So I submitted a plan to them and says, okay, if you want to do load testing, here's what you do. You get everybody on the beta version of the system. Right, and then you can see how quick the server does. Kent says in the comments, I used to work in retail POS, and rule number 1: do not release on Friday. Why is that, Kent? Why don't you release? Oh, because weekend is the biggest time to buy, right? For POS, I would guess. So that's probably what the minimum guess is.
Yeah, because if you're working in retail, you don't want to be having problems over the weekend.
So again, you have to talk to the client to see what the ideal. Right now, everybody's, if it's a POS customer, it's a chain. They have multiple stores throughout the U.S. Probably weekend is not the best time to cut over. Here's a big one. What happens usually is the customer loves your work. I mean, they love it. They've seen the beta. They see how fast the SQL Server is compared to an Access backend. They call you up and say, Kent, man, you are a miracle worker. Kent, we love what you did here, Kent. Or they call Rochelle up, and Rochelle, we love what you did here. And when they call me up and give me that, my chest inflates, right? My head grows. I'm like, this is what we live for. There's a great chat by Simon Sinek on YouTube, the how, what, and why. And why is it we do this? Because we want to help people. Yes, we do want to make money, but we love helping people, bottom line, all right? So they call you up and says, hey, great work. Can we do this other thing too? I'm like, my criteria for adding new features is it mission critical? If it's mission critical and we really need to do it, okay, I get it, right? We need to do it, right? For some reason, it escaped everybody that we needed that feature in the new SQL Server with Access system. Learn how to use these words, mission critical, right? Fallback plan, optimization rounds. And let them know, look, I understand you're excited, and we're happy that you're excited, and we're happy that you love these, because you can tell the gears are going in their minds, right? They're calling you up and says, hey, we love this. And now we're thinking about an app, mobile app, and we're thinking about modifying our websites so our clients can learn. All right, slow down, Sparky. first, let's finish this project, and then we can address all those other things, right? You really don't want to elevate your blood pressure by having more fun. First of all, then you have to create a change order. That's not a lot of fun. You have to create a change order because now you need more hours. You have to get that approved by the project lead, and accounting has to sign off on it, and it's a lot of work to increase the budget sometimes. One other thing is, over the years, I can count on both hands the amount of CIOs I've worked with, Chief Information Officers. I usually do not work with CIOs. Usually I work with department heads or owners of companies, because CIOs don't have the best, they don't think the best about Microsoft Access, right? And being a senior Access consultant, Access VP, makes them feel a little bit better, but still, they would rather not do it. Now, there's a whole chat I did on this. Why is it that IT hates Microsoft Access? I did a presentation for Access Europe last year. Is Access going away? Or you can go to AccessUserGroups.org and YouTube. It's a great chat I did for Colin in Access Europe about is Access going away, and why are the reasons why IT hates Access. But bottom line is, when I walk into the CIO office, right, they're thinking about migrating, I hype up the SQL Server component, right, because they love SQL Server. So when they ask me, okay, Juan, what are we doing here? This is, well, we're going to leverage the power of SQL Server, migrate this data over, leverage your Active Directory security to secure this data, and be able to provide your employees with secure, enhanced medium to do their work. I mean, did I mention Access and all that? No, right? Right. So all they're like, okay, they realize I'm writing for Microsoft Access, but I emphasize the SQL Server part of it. So if you ever sit across from the CIO, do the same thing. We're going to leverage your Active Directory investment to improve security. We're going to safeguard your data with better backups of SQL Server, right? We're going to provide the organization with unique insights into this data and how the SQL Server by using Power BI, right? So you want to have these in your back pocket. So when you sit across from the CIO, you don't have to mention Microsoft Access like I do, right? Yeah, of course, my shirt says Microsoft Access MVP and all that, but I emphasize that as the SQL Server part of that equation. All right, now you did this Tuesday morning. Everything is okay. You can migrate over the weekend. You can breathe a sigh of relief. One of the things that I tell clients when I sell them on this is, look, once it's on SQL Server in the cloud, especially, it opens up to all kinds of things. I'm just going to give you a few of them here. You can use SQL Server reporting services to deliver reports via email. You can create client portals for the website so they can log in. Clients can log in, see invoice history, for example, or order products. You can create Power Apps for Microsoft Teams, which we've done that with the clients already. You can create mobile apps. I mean, the possibilities are endless. And it's your job as a consultant to make them understand this is going to open a lot of doors for your company. Migrating the data to SQL Server, right? You want to be able to leverage this new platform. And that's why I use the word platform a lot. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a platform for your company. It'll allow you to expand and use SQL Server in the cloud to expand the capabilities so that you can improve operations, improve sales, improve the customer experience, make your employees more productive, because now they're not using Access, but using a mobile app. I mean, you want to use these techniques when you sell it and make them see the value of what is happening, right? All right, we're going to open up to questions. You guys like the presentation?
Yep. Thanks, Juan. You made a really good point about reconciling the record counts after you've done the migration. That's a very good way of making sure you got it right.
Yep.
Thanks for highlighting that.
Yeah, it's a basic validation technique, right? I have 100,000 records in Access. I have 100,000 records in SQL Server. Did it all migrate properly? That I won't know until I run the reports, right? That calculates the totals for for we've had issues, believe it or not, where the 100,000 records got migrated over, but some of the values were changed, right? Especially when it comes to date time, you got to watch those. Money is another one. You know, when you have a report that spans 5 years and $150 million in sales, invariably, when you add up all those variations in cents, it's not the same as an access, right? So you have to watch it when it comes to currency and decimals and so forth. Thank you, Rochelle. Appreciate that. Thank you, David. Nicely summarized. I cannot stress enough how much faster SQL Server is or any queries we have passed through compared to. Yeah, I always make David, I always make the comparison of a bicycle going to a car, right? So I'm on the bicycle when I'm using Microsoft Access. When I get into SQL Server Express, which is got one arm tied behind its back, there are 3 limitations in SQL Server Express. It only uses 1 gigabyte of RAM. It only uses 4 processors. It only has 11 gigabytes of data storage because they want you to buy the full license SQL Server. Having said that, I've migrated so many companies to SQL Server Express. I've only had 5 companies ever migrate to a standard edition of SQL Server. Because Access is small database by definition, right? They're not going to have 1 million transactions in Access. If they would have, they would have been over SQL Server already, right? And so Access and SQL Server Express are the best combination. Thank you, David. Well, look, if you love this presentation, please tweet about, talk about it on LinkedIn, help us promote. Love to. Thank you so much for everybody who showed up here today. I want to remind you, we have other presentations throughout the month. You can check them at AccessUserGroups.org. Check out the calendar. Also, don't forget the SQL Server Access to SQL Server tool, the conversion tool that will convert your Access queries to SQL Server. Wonderful tool. That's at AccessUserGroups.org. And not only does it convert the Access to SQL Server, it also creates the text so you can insert into your code. Saves you countless hours. Mark Edwards, what do you think about that tool that we have on the website to convert to text string so you can paste into your code, the query?
It works great and takes a little getting used to learn how to use it and how to query it and operate it. But once you do and it becomes all hand, you can do it fairly quickly. There's only very few hiccups. And that's if you have a query that's really, really complex.
Thank you very much, Mark. And thank you, Wendy, for that comment.
Hey, Juan, when are we going to get an API for that great tool?
Good point. I think that'd be a great feature set. I need to talk to my other chapter presidents in the council.
That'd be awesome.
Thank you. That's a wonderful idea. I haven't thought about that. That's really, really nice. All right. So look, next month, do you guys want me to talk about sales next month? How to sell Access solutions, how to find new customers, how to get noticed on the web. Would you like to do this? Want me to do the sales presentation next month?
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
All right, good. Well, thank you once again for everybody who showed up. Again, this is Juan Soto, and this recording will be up later on this month on YouTube. It's been a pleasure. So long, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Juan. Take care.
Thanks, Juan. Take care.
Good night. Thank you, everybody.